Shalom Aleichem Ravotai. The Mishnah Yomi continues, beginning the 5th parak of Maasrot. Mishnah Aleph, Ha'okir, Shtolim mitoch shelo, v'nata l'toch shelo patur. Somebody who uproots a shtolim here is like young plants, little saplings, from his own property, and he plants them in his own property. He does not have to separate Maaser. So why would we think we should separate Maaser from moving a plant around, doing some gardening here? It's because we cannot plant seeds of tevel. So if somebody harvested his wheat and it's tevel, he has not separated the tithes, it's forbidden to plant that. You understand, it would cause a loss to the Kohanim, Levim, Aniyim, to Yerushalayim. So we're not going to do that. So we're going to separate the seeds, we're going to separate all the tithes first from the seeds before we plant them. So similarly, if we had, a tree with it starting to grow berries, apples, whatever it is, we might have thought, well, let's separate all the Maaser first and then move the tree. No, we're still allowed to move the young tree and replant it within your own property. Lakach bimchubar. If he purchased produce that's mechubar, that's attached lekarka to the ground still, potter. So he doesn't have to separate Maaser at this point. Now, when he harvests the crop later on, yes, he'll separate Maaser. But right now he's purchasing a whole tree or a caper bush or whatever it is, it's pater. We did mention this was a machlokis in the 2nd parak and the 6th Mishnah, so see the mafarshim there for details. Lokot lishloach lechavero pater. If he picked produce to send it to his chaver, pater. Doesn't have to separate Maaser yet. Now we did remember in the 2nd Mishnah in the 4th parak, according to Beis Hillel, some gifts were chayev and Maaser, but that was when it was a gemar malacha. So here apparently it's not a gemar malacha type thing. It's young plants; they're not processed yet, so you could send it as a gift. Now the Rambam has a different girsa. Instead of lakat, he has lakach. Lakach is lokeach, is a purchase. So apparently, according to the Rambam's girsa, even buying a plant for your friend, buying produce for your friend would be pater from Maaser, because your intention is not to keep it for yourself, but to send it for your friend. Obviously, you'd inform your friend that it's tevel, and you'd have to separate Maaser. It's a reminder that sometimes the Rambam has a bit of a different take on explaining Mishnayot, and sometimes there's one letter different in the girsa of Mishnayot that the Rambam had, which is, of course, an important reminder to pay attention to every letter in the Torah and in the Mishnah makes a difference. Mishnah continues, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah Omer, Im yesh keyotzi behen nimkorim b'shuk hare elu chayavin. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says, if similar plants are sold in the market, then he would be chayav Maaser. So if they are selling young plants, then even though you're just replanting your young plant, you would still have to take tithes from the produce that's on it before you replant it. Because the Maaser, they are selling something like that. Mishnah Bet ha'oker lefet u'tsnonot. So now he's uprooting a turnip or a radish, mitoch shelo, from his field, v'natel letoch shelo, and planting it somewhere else in his property, lezera, to make seeds, chayiv mipnei shehu gornan. He has to take Maaser because this is the gorin, this is the finishing stage of this vegetable. And what's going to happen, the Mefarshim say, is by replanting a turnip or a radish, it's going to stop growing as a vegetable and just make seeds. So now it's done being a vegetable, food in that matter, and it's just having seeds. That's his intention, so it's like the final stage. So this is good to know if you're replanting turnips and radishes. Bitzalim, he has got a bunch of onions. Misha hishrishu ba'aliyah. He has onions in his attic, and his attic is part of the building, and you understand it's dirty and dusty up there. And so these onions start taking root in the dust in his attic. So when they start taking root on the floor, and the floor is attached to the ground, tiharu milatame, they are now tahor from spreading tuma, meaning they no longer become susceptible to ritual contamination, to tumah, because they're now attached to the ground. And produce that is attached to the ground is invulnerable, is Superman to tumah. Now, the reason that we allow these are just onions in the attic. So how are they attached to the ground? The Bartanura explains, they're as if they're really planted. The Torah ribta b'tcharazrayim. The Torah uses extra words. You understand, there are no extra words. There are no extra letters in the Torah. So, but the Torah says, Al kol zera zarua asher yizareya tahorhu. There are some extra words there, meaning the Torah wants us to learn out extra scenarios that cause plants to be tahor, which includes this one of the onions taking root in the dusty attic. But the Bartner points out that's just in terms of tuma and tahara. But for other things like meiser and shvit, they're considered detached because lemaisa, these onions are just kind of trying to find a place to grow, but they're in the attic. They're not really in the ground. Mishnah concludes nafla alehem apolitz v'hem megulim. So if Nebuch, the attic collapses, the roof caves in on the attic, and now they're covered up with dirt and dust and schmutz, but the leaves are still showing, but the onion bulbs themselves are now underground. It's like they're mamish planted. These onions planted themselves. So then they're considered, for all purposes, shvit purposes as well, as being planted in the ground. Shkoyach Rabosai Shvodov.